Hi everyone, welcome to the Lancaster Community Library. I'm Alice Cooper, the Library Director, and we are just so thrilled to have such a wonderful author expo today. And we're so glad you're here to hear Christina Dalcher as our keynote speaker. We're so happy that she has a local connection with her parents living here. She has written several books. She was launched into her fame with her book Vox, which came out during the Me Too movement. And I understand her newest book will be published in the UK in A Sentence in August, but we won't get to see it till maybe next spring. So a little bit of housekeeping. There are restrooms in the back around the corner if you need that. After Christina's talk, everyone is welcome to either man your author table downstairs or visit with the authors and talk about their writing. Lastly, I would like to mention that next week on Thursday, we will have another program in our series, A Special Evening With, and that is with Dr. Jonathan Edlow, who is a Harvard medical doctor and an emergency medicine doctor, and he is going to talk about Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses. Yes, should be quite, yes.
Will that be on Zoom as well?
Yes, almost all of our programs are Zoom through Facebook Live. They are also recorded, so you can watch on Facebook or you can watch on our YouTube channel. So, without further ado, thank you again for being here, and welcome, Christina.
Thank you for coming, everybody. It is on, right? Okay. So I thought a lot about what I wanted the theme to be here today, and because some of you are writers, some of you are established writers, some of you are newer writers, some of you aren't writers, but work in the greater book industry. And so I wanted to think about what one theme or what one word might be something that would be appropriate for all of you. And it's not going to be writing advice. Because why? Because a quick Google search on writing advice, not necessarily with the quotes, tells me there is absolutely nothing left to offer that hasn't already been said. Nobel Prize winners offer tips. They got 40 experts, these are actual hits, telling beginners exactly what to do. You got best-selling authors giving us insight into their creative processes. You want to know my creative process? You read the newspapers, look at the headlines, make it scarier than it actually is, if possible, and sit down and write until you're done. That's my process. You don't even have to, I saved you the Google search. I think the romance novelists probably have it easier. They don't have to read the headlines. They just kind of look around and maybe they look at like wedding sites or something or to get their inspiration. But there's also that wonderful book written by Stephen King that's kind of half craft and half memoir called On Writing, which I highly recommend. If I could only have one copy of a writing advice book on my shelves, I think that would be it. Because it's sort of about writing and it's sort of not about writing, just like what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I thought if there's anything that I can tell you, and I'm a relatively new author, despite that wonderful write-up in the newspaper about my multiple awards and my best-selling fiction. Only one of my books has made the best-selling list, and that was not in this country. And truth be told, I've only won one award, and that was also not in this country. But I came up with 2 words of advice that I can give you, and here they are. Be fearless. All right, let's let that sink in for a minute. I'm going to talk about what that means in a few different ways. So, for one, how many people are writers? Let's take a quick audience poll. Whether you're published or not. I mean, if you write, you're a writer. Doesn't matter whether you're published. Okay, great. So everybody except Georgine. Didn't raise. She never raises her hand. Damn it. So we know that writing takes work, right? And we know that it takes skill. Not all the time. There are plenty of books written by people who seem to lack that particular characteristic. It takes talent, same thing there, and perseverance. And then there's that old button in the chair, honey, algorithm. BITCH. You know, sit in the chair, honey, until you're done. That's like sort of the writer's corollary to the athlete's just do it. You want to run? Just run. You want to write? Just write. There's something really tautological about it all. But it's still scary. And I think fearlessness is the singular quality we all need to cultivate as writers. And I mean this in multiple ways. We need the bravery at the very beginning to pour out our emotions, spilling ink onto paper with some of our blood actually mixed into it. That's not literal, that's figurative. Well, because a lot of people say literally now and they don't mean literally, so I just wanted to make sure that literally wasn't, implied there. And that's no small trick to do that. That's no small trick to actually write stuff that you feel that's from your heart and expect that somebody else might read this. It takes bravery. We need the courage to, when we're done, to send our words out into the world, knowing that once we do, that part of us is gone, right? I mean, it's floating in the public sphere. It's not under our control anymore. We don't need to go down the Barthesian route and say the author is dead. This one isn't. Y'all look alive to me. That person over there, no, you're fine. The authors are very much alive. We're very much alive. But our words now somehow don't belong to us as much as they did before. And we need a healthy amount of self-esteem and thick, carapace-like skin to hang in there and keep on going when all those rejections start pouring in. And there will be rejections. There will be way more rejections than acceptances. For some of us, through some periods, there will only be rejections and no acceptances. And that's hard. And that takes courage to deal with it and to say, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep on writing. I mean, a bland form rejection from an agent or an editor, and you know they use a dartboard, right? The darts all say things like, didn't connect with, wasn't working for me, couldn't understand, not relevant, and then the dartboards say the character, the plot, the language, the sentence level writing, your lack of Oxford comma usage. They do, actually. I heard this from an agent, and I trust him. And he's an agent at Writer's House. He used to work for Jody Reamer, who sold Twilight. So I trust him implicitly. You know, these bland form rejections, even though we know they're using the rejection dartboard method to write them, they still sting. I mean, they hit like a bludgeon. You've just sent this thing out that's part of you. It's got your own non-literal blood mixed into it, and somebody just says, no thanks, not interested. So we got to have this like fighters determination. I mean, we have to be like Rocky. And remember what happened to Rocky? Rocky didn't even want to win. He just wanted to go the 15 rounds, right? And he didn't win. I mean, that sucks. To keep going, sorry, Mom, and think, well, yeah, all I want to do is make it through those 15 grueling rounds, and I still won't have the belt or trophy or whatever they give out in boxing. That's hard. That takes courage. That takes fearlessness. And this is all before you even get the book deal that we're talking about. Then there's the other part. After you celebrated and broken open the several bottles of champagne and you celebrated that deal, you've got a whole new batch of things that you need to not be afraid of. So, take the editorial process. You need the courage to stand up to your editor if your editor is bending your book or your plot or your character or your theme more than you want it to be bent. You need to be able to push back sometimes. I mean, you're the author. Eventually it's your name that's going to be on the cover, not the editor's. The editor's name isn't going to be anywhere in the book unless you choose to put it in the acknowledgments. I have very good editors, actually. Except that one, yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about her later. So you need that, but you also need the courage to say, okay, actually, maybe I should change this. You need the courage to excise an entire chunk of your hard work, right? You need the courage to watch your Scrivener word count go down when you've taken those 2 paragraphs out, or pages, or chapters. And you're going to have to unceremoniously kill off that character you loved, or that fabulous dialogue that you wrote at 3 in the morning that was hilarious at the time you were typing it, but not at other times. Or the sex scene you just knew was going to be the sex scene to end all sex scenes. And you know the truth, all sex scenes are bad. All of them. If you can find me a sex scene that is not bad, I'll give you a free book after this, all right? But I need to see the entire sex scene first, so it might take some time. So we need courage here as well. It takes one kind of courage to know when to stick to your guns, and it also takes courage to know when to holster them. Okay? Now let's move on to the publicity tours, okay? You got the agent, you got the book deal, you got the editing done. You deleted the really bad sex scene and the unhilarious dialogue. And now you're going on your book tour. And you still have to be fearless, because there's always going to be someone more charismatic, more famous, more charming, more witty than you are on any given book panel. And they'll know it. And they'll make sure you know it sometimes. Actually, most of them are really nice, but every once in a while you get one of these people who they just want to remind you. There's always going to be someone who, after they listen to your talk, they pipe up with a question that is specifically designed to make them look good and you look bad. This happens in academia all the time. The point of the Q&A session is not to ask questions and get answers. The point of the Q&A session in academic conferences, and I used to do this for a living, I didn't do the thing I'm about to say, is so that the questioner gets to basically say, but my research is this. That they sell their own research, and in the process they tear yours apart. It's terrible stuff. There's always going to be a journalist, radio, television, newspaper, or otherwise, who wants to pry just a little bit too far into your personal life. Are you married? Do you have children? What do your parents do for a living? Do you go to church? Like, what? So you have to be fearless and say, I'm not answering those questions. You don't always have to be nice. It's a delicate balance. And by the way, none of that garbage has anything to do with the book that you just wrote about, a walrus named Frank or whatever. So you're going to need a spine of steel when you read the reviews. You're going to need titanium reinforcements to that spine of steel when you check how many stars your book got on Amazon. And I highly recommend the titanium and steel reinforcements aside, I highly recommend knocking back at least a few shots of gin before you even peek at that first royalty statement. But there's another thing that requires courage today in the publishing industry. And it's a very delicate subject. So I'm just going to come right out and say it. The publishing world has gone mad. Why? 2 words. American dirt. Anybody hear of the book? Anybody know what happened? Okay, super. Alice? I will. All right, so some of you, not Alice, might remember the brouhaha that surrounded Janine Cummins' book, which hit the shelves in January 2020. Stephen King, who doesn't blurb very much stuff, called it extraordinary. The Washington Post raved about it. Oprah picked it for her book club. And then all hell broke loose. Because some people didn't think that Janine Cummins, for all intents and purposes, a white American woman who's only a quarter Latina, as I am, had any business writing a story about a Mexican woman and her son fleeing Mexico for the US. The 40-stop book tour was canceled. 40-stop. Protests were organized. The author was accused of everything from inaccurate sprinklings of Spanish throughout the book to relying on tired stereotypes to positioning the United States as some kind of sanctuary. That last part, I don't know, kind of is. So, in the end, American Dirt, the novel, stayed on the bestseller list for 36 weeks, the New York Times bestseller list. It sold, I think, over 3 million copies worldwide. But that didn't make things easy for the author. And it hasn't made things easy for people who earn their living making books. And I mean writers, agents, editors, and so forth. So to illustrate this, here's a snippet that I'll read from the New York Times that was written this past January, 3 years after American Dirt first hit the shelves. This is from the NYT. Looking back now, it's clear that the American Dirt debacle of January 2020 was a harbinger, the moment when the publishing world lost its confidence and ceded moral authority to the worst impulses of its detractors. In the years since, publishers have become wary of what is now thought as another American Dirt situation, which is to say, a book that puts its author and publishing house in the line of fire. This fear now hangs over every step of a fraught process with questions over who can write what, who should blurb, and who can edit, permeating what feels like a minefield. Books that would have once been greenlit are now passed over. Sensitivity readers are employed on a regular basis. Self-censorship is rampant. And it's all true. I know a lot of people in the publishing industry. We talk about this all the time. So you see, we need some fearlessness. We need more fearlessness, not less of it. We need to be able to write what we like, what we want to write, what we feel is important to write. And if readers don't care for it, then they don't have to read it. The industry, in my mind, needs to publish what readers want to buy, not what non-readers dictate is socially acceptable. Because in the end, if we stick with the safe bet, if we write and publish only what we know and only what we've personally experienced, there won't be any more fiction. Everything will be memoir. I'm going to tell you about that time in college when I pulled an all-nighter for a Shakespeare paper. Yeah, that was fun. I could do a whole chapter on that. It's my experience. Nobody else can write that but me. Probably not. Probably not is my guess. You probably don't want to read that. So I don't know whether I can call myself fearless. I've certainly done some things and said some things that make me a bit interesting of a person in the publishing world. And that's okay, because I'm me. But I haven't walked through the world for half a century with, a super cape hero on my back. I only know one other person who said, well, one person actually, who said that I was fearless. And that was my first linguistics professor from about 25 years ago. His name was Charlie Jones. Fantastic, fantastic guy. And I ended up dedicating my first book, Vox, to him. Because he didn't only teach me about syntax and semantics and linguistic meta-theory. He taught me about speaking up and sticking to my guns. And he's gone now, but he was right. And I think about him all the time, because what he told me was not to worry about whether everyone agreed with what I had to say. He said it was okay for me to use my voice. So I try to fear nothing, even when that seems impossible. And authors are, right now, very fearful. We are fearful every day of our contracts being canceled, of our books being pulped for saying the wrong thing or writing the wrong thing. But we still try to write the stories that we want to write. So the best advice I can give, and in my mind, the only advice worth its salt, is encapsulated in 2 words. Let's be fearless. And then sit back and watch what happens, because I have a feeling good things will happen. And given this not so brave new world that we're living in these days, I don't think there's any reason to limit our fearlessness to writing. Thank you. It is, thank you very much. It was, it's 1:29, and I'd love to read you a snippet of the book that won't come out until next spring. Um, yeah, here we are. Okay, so this book is called The Sentence. Its original title actually was Vita, which I really love, but The Sentence is okay too. And it's told from 2 points of view. One is the point of view of a prosecutor, and the other point of view is the man named Jake Milford, who she put on death row. So here's Jake talking about death, speaking of fearlessness. Or not. This is death row inmate number 39384. People say death is different. They can't know this, but they're right. It's different when it happens, and sometimes it's different before it happens. For me, the change started long before the day of my execution. I've spent the last 6 years of my life in a state of differentness. Different color clothes, different cell block, different rules. Maybe it would have been better. No, not better. There's no sense of better in this man's mind anymore. Maybe it would have been less awful, slightly less awful, if I wasn't the only one. If I wasn't the sole occupant of a 12-cell block for 6 years. Time and numbers are such funny things. Take the number 6. 6 sounds small. A man can put up with 6 of pretty much anything. Multiply it by 365, and I reckon it's still something you can rationalize. 2,190, about the same as high school and an associate's degree. Multiply that by hours, and we're getting somewhere. 6 becomes a few thousand, becomes 52,000. We haven't even gotten to the minutes yet, all 3 million of them. Over 3 million minutes ticked by while I've lived in that state of differentness. Some flew, some crawled, most lingered. I want you to imagine a parking space. Walk its perimeter, counting out your steps, stopping a stride or two short of each corner. I want you to imagine an area only a smidge larger than a king-size bed, or roughly the same dimensions as one of the kennels in your local SPCA. Pace out 84 square feet. Get comfortable in them. Know them. They're your new home. They're your bedroom and your living room and your dining room and your toilet. They're your meditation space and your exercise space and your oh Christ, I wish I were dead space. Those 84 square feet are your world for over 22 hours each day. Now imagine craving to return to them, as I've done. We don't know. We don't know initially what's going on exactly with Jake Milford or with the prosecutor in this story, but I can promise you that it's probably not what you think. So it's a thriller. It's about how to undo the undoable, or how to remedy the irremediable. And I hope it makes people think a little bit. So with that, I'm happy to take some questions.
I just want to make a comment about American Dirt.
Yes.
I read it, and it was a wonderful book, and I really enjoyed the book. I live in North Virginia part-time. And I have a sister-in-law who's an anthropologist who's lived in San Antonio, Texas for many years. And I said, Anne, I don't understand why people are attacking her because she wrote this story. And I mean, if someone who was full Latino had written it, then fine, but they didn't. She did. Well, my sister-in-law's comment was, yes, but you have to understand, it's really hard for Latino women or Latino men to get things published. And so there's a lot of people who may have wanted to tell the story or something like it, but they can't get their book as far as you have done or she did with the editor. And thought, oh, that's an interesting thing I hadn't thought about, that there's lack of opportunity.
That's entirely possible. It's equally possible that they've written books and they weren't as good. And you know, publishers in the end of the day, it's a business. They want a book that they can sell, and they'll love you. They'll love their authors for as long as they can sell their books. And when they can't sell their books anymore, they're not going to love you so much. And that's a promise. So I do think that there are a lot of voices who may have been unrepresented in publishing, but very often it's, you know, that's one of the arguments. In fact, the book went over very well in Mexico, as far as I've read. There weren't any complaints there. The complaints seemed to come from the U.S. and also very often not from Hispanic people, which is interesting too. But thank you. Yeah, it is nicely written, really. Yeah.
Did you always want to be a writer, or not? When did that spark happen?
It happened. Wow, it happened. August 6, 2014. So that is just about 9 years, just short of 9 years ago. Yeah, I know, I did not always want to be a writer. I started off in numbers. I did accounting and budget. And then I went and I got a degree in linguistics and had a rather short-lived but fun academic career. And then moved back to the States and woke up in the middle one night and I said, Bruce, I want to write a book. And just, yeah, whatever. So, yeah, so no, I didn't always want to be a writer. And that was actually a contender for the theme of the talk, was never too late. So if you ever have me back here, maybe it'll be never too late. Because I see a lot of people here who are, you know, not teenagers, right? I mean, except for this guy. No, I mean, if we're going to write now, right, and if we haven't been writing, if we're going to pick up the pen, what I mean is it's probably going to be a second career for us, right? And I think that's daunting to people, like, well, what if I can't do it? Well, who cares? I mean, just do it, right? Just be fearless.
I came in late, so you may have addressed this, but what is your feeling about self-publishing versus publishing with a big publisher? There's always people on each side.
I don't have any experience with self-publishing. I do think that it's hard work if you're going to do it right. It really depends what your goal is. For some people, it is enough to have some books printed for family and friends, and they're not worried about bestseller lists and everything else. They just want to have this thing bound and done and, you know, sellable to their near and dear. For other people, they want to be the next no, I was thinking of, what's her name? Yes, Hilton. No, not Hilton. Who's the one who did 50 Shades of Grey?
Oh.
L.S. Hilton? No. Anyway. Eel, thank you. No, Hinton was the Outsiders. Yeah. S.E. Yeah, you know, it's hard, right, with these initials, and they all have S's in them. They have to change those. Yeah, I mean, she self-published and then, you know, got picked up. I mean, so a lot of, some of it has to do with luck, some of it has to do with hard work, some of it has to do with how much of a platform do you already have. I mean, do you have 10,000 followers on Twitter, or
That
do
was
you
my
have
next
2? And so I don't think there's a right answer or a wrong answer. I do get the idea that people still are a little bit biased towards traditional publishing in the sense that they automatically assume that if you're self-published, it meant you tried the traditional route and you couldn't make a go of it. So they make a judgment on your book that way, and I don't think that's fair.
Well,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I listen to, well, different podcasts, things like that, and people have published with publishing houses and then went the self-publishing route because they wanted more control.
Right.
But to your point, I know a lot of authors that get discouraged because they're told they don't have enough following on social media.
Oh.
And social media, quite honestly, in my opinion, has become like middle school. You know, a lot of mean girls and bullies.
I loathe it. Yeah, I went social media free for a whole year or more. I mean, nothing, not a peep. I lost everything, all my connections, absolutely everything. And then I thought, oh, maybe I should get back on it. Oh, all right, well, I'll just do Twitter. And I do Twitter. I'm very vocal on Twitter, and it's great because I do have actually 10,000 followers, and which is since I follow like 1/20th of that, I'm quite happy. But it's not really the number of followers, it's kind of the quality. So I really like that, Helen Joyce and, a lot of these British journalists and a few members of parliament from the UK and Abigail Shriver, who's a journalist here, and J.K. Rowling, who you might recognize. They're all following me on Twitter, which is kind of nice, but I had to work hard to get there, and I also had to piss a lot of people off. So, yeah, it's tricky. I think that one of the reasons they expect you to have a following is this. Book publicity budgets and marketing budgets are really they correlate with the advance of the book. So, for instance, speaking of Janine Cummins and American Dirt, so she got a 7-figure advance. I don't know what flavor of 7 figures it was, but it was at least $1 million. If a publisher spends $1 million on an advance that they may or may not get back, you can be damn sure they are going to invest a significant amount of that, and maybe 100,000 or 200,000 into publicity and marketing. If they give you a $10,000 advance, they're not going to be investing $100,000 in publicity and marketing, right? So they expect a lot of that publicity work to be done by the authors these days. And that's another way in which I think traditional publishing has gone mad. They're just, for a debut novel, you're fine. And then after that, there's something new down the road. So it's tricky, and it can feel very unfair. And I think, especially for people who are older than, let's say, I don't know, 12, we don't live our lives on social media, right? I mean, we don't do this all the time and sit there and monitor our phones and press those little hearts and stars and, like and love and then retweet and all that. I mean, who wants to do that all day long? Yeah, exactly. So that is a challenge. I think that you can always push back and say, you can do other things. You can get in touch with lots and lots of independent bookstores and build a network there. You can build a network of, actual book clubs or library organizations like this one, right? And then you can tell them, that's my platform, right? So,
Thank you.
and you can always have a newsletter, right? If you have a website, you can have a sign-up space for a newsletter, and you can just once every couple of months, you send something out to your followers. I don't think social media is all important, and it's probably harmed me more than it's helped me. But that's because I have a big mouth. Yeah.
That's me. How many rejections did your book get before it got picked up, or was it just straight up spark?
Eric Vox, the first one, yeah, and it was actually kind of an interesting experience because I wrote it for, oh no, it wasn't Vox, it was the book that I wrote before that for National Novel Writing Month back in 2014. That was never sold to a publisher. I never got a book deal, but I did get 7 offers of representation from literary agents. And the reason that that happened was because I joined like a little pitch party on social media, on Twitter, or some kind of contest where you submit like a little blurb or a teaser, a 1-sentence outline, something to really hook someone. And there was a well-known literary agent who liked it. Once one does, all the other ones think they're going to miss out on something. That's what we call them chum fests for a reason. I'm serious. I mean, does anybody remember Cat Person, the short story from the New Yorker that went viral in December 2017? Kristen Rupenian? Okay, that thing went viral. 2 weeks later, she had $1 million book deal for a short story collection. Nobody pays $1 million for a short story collection. No one. And there were all these fights. I talked with my European publishers about this. You know, the same thing. Auctions all over Europe, and my publishers were shaking their heads. They're like, no, we didn't want to get involved in it. That book never earned out. It couldn't have earned out. It's not a bad book. And I'm not saying anything about the author or the book, but a short story collection from a new writer who nobody really knows, based on a story that went viral one year, which people forgot about the next week. Yeah. I mean, this is madness, right? It's madness, and it's also very tainting because you'll never, if you never earn out that advance, publishers are always going to look at the numbers, and they're going to make decisions about whether or not they want to offer you a book deal based on whether you earned out in your previous deals. So, yeah, it's complicated. And it's such a black box. I mean, I actually love talking about this because people have questions about the publishing industry that you really can't find anywhere, right? It's such a black box. Right? I mean, it's just like this closed little private room, and nobody knows how it works. And I think it's important for people to know how it works. I mean, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's, you know, it's good information.
So, real quick, from your experiences, you found more success in the American publishing industry than the Keynote, which you alluded several times. England, I forgot exclusively that was the content.
That's an interesting question.
Can you repeat it? We can't hear back.
Oh, yes, of course. This lady wanted to know if I found more success in the U.S. with the U.S. publishing industry than with the UK or European continent publishing.
That's what I mean. Are they so different, or are they pretty much the same?
I'll tell you how different they are. Vox sold about 85,000 copies in the United States since it was published in August 2018. It sold well over 200,000 copies in the UK. The UK has 1/6 the population of the United States. That's the best way I can answer that question. And everybody I've asked, why is that, has not been able to give me a good answer. I mean, it's smaller country, not so diverse country, not so spread out, not so politically divided. You know, maybe they just like the theme more. But it's impossible to tell. Maybe did they do more publicity? Was it the fact that I got on television once in the UK and never got on television in the US? Who knows? You know, I think I got better magazine reviews in the UK than I did in the US, so that might have something to do with it. It's really tricky. Also, Vox, if anybody's read it, you know that there is an element of that sort of Christian moral majority, I mean, very fundamentalist moral majority that wants to go back to this culture of domesticity. And so England's, let's say, religiosity is a bit different than that here in the United States. So what I'm saying is it might not appeal quite as many people in the UK. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, it sold all of them sold really well in Italy, really poorly in Germany. I don't know. I don't know. It's a mystery.
Can you share?
I'm sorry.
I know.
I think we're going to have to cut it off so the authors can go to their tables. But Christina's going to stay. She's got books for sale and for signing, and it's not too late to ask her questions personally. And lastly, we should do the drawing.
Yes.
Yes. So let's see. I'll do one of all of them. Okay, so this one's for Bob. You already have it. Twyla Lee. Oh, she's Twyla Lee. Twyla Lee. Twyla, she must be downstairs. Okay, Twyla Lee. Okay. And David Weiss. Okay. Paula Weiss.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. Sure. All right. Thank you so much, Christina.
All right.
We're really